Hello, everyone. This is Gilbert Jalon. I'm talking to you here from Private Corporate Counsel downtown Orlando. This is Tufts On Tax, where all your tax questions and answers are right here with Mr. T. Scott Tufts. When it comes to tax law and taxes and tax litigation, you can call him at 407-647-7887, or you can email him at stufts@pcc.law. That's stufts@pcc.law, or you can visit the website at privatecorporatecounsel.com. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. And today we are covering student athletes, right?
Yeah, whether they are employees or not.
Okay.
And why we are looking at this topic is it's important that in the world of NIL, name, image, and likeness discussions that are occurring in a very popular topic, the issue then becomes what is going on with the test for employment, and our audience needs to understand that because that's employee independent contractor, but it's also understanding the nuances that go into any laws. And so that's why we focus on it, because it's quite interesting, because certain athletes are looking to unionize in some of the in the Northeast to provide themselves with a collective bargaining power that will kind of go around, as I understand it, antitrust stuff. But the point being that you unionize when you want more rights. There's a lot of money in the NIL situation going, and it's causing profound changes in the way that student athletes approach college. So for our audience, we then say, okay, so is there a tax issue here? Well, of course there is. Student athletes, and whether they're employees or not, gets us into, well, how do you determine whether or not a student athlete is an employee or not? And if you're looking at it from a standpoint of what laws we're talking about, there are decisions that are now coming out that are suggesting that for purposes of the testing for union and whatnot, that there are class actions and things being pursued where the student athletes are grouping together and claiming as a class that they are employees. And so therefore they should be getting certain rights under the law. So if you follow the thinking, then what we do in the tax world is say, okay, so how is that going to impact the analysis? And the IRS has previously suggested that student athletes are independent contractors. Some of the states have said they are not employees by statute. So the question becomes, will that need to get revisited? Can that get revisited? And how does that impact all of this? Because if you're a student athlete and you're trying to do your taxes correctly, you're going to get into the issues there.
I have a question.
Sure.
Now, first of all, why are we covering this today?
Well, because independent contractor employee is a tax issue, because whether or not you are an employee or independent contractor affects how you do your taxes. So number one, it's that. Number two, the topic of employee independent contractor is pretty significant because there's tests that are applied, and we want to look at those and know that. And it's not just taxes that are impacted. So therefore, we're able to point out to our audience that when you have laws that affect one area of life, right, they may come on over and affect tax, and vice versa. So you can't live in a world where you close off knowledge. And what's interesting here is that the complexity of it goes far beyond taxes, but taxes, like everything in life, don't go away either. So our audience can't put the blinders on and say, I don't need to worry about this. If you've got employee independent contractor issues, you're going to want to understand what tests apply. You've got states that do the ABC type testing. That's a presumption of employment. We've talked about that in the past. And then you've got the IRS that uses a categories of evidence approach where they take a series of factors, put them in categories. And we've talked about that. And you have three categories, and you weigh those categories in trying to assess whether or not a person is or is not an independent contractor. And then in the tax world, we also have Section 530 that protects good faith decisions up front that are supported, that show good faith, then they are protected, even if it's a close, but no, it's a close call. You get the benefit of the doubt under the tax law if you meet the criteria for Section 530. So at the end of the day, there's a lot going on here. And when we come back to this topic every now and then, we want to continue to approach it. So in the press, and what you'll see in the reporting, is that the NIL issue, name, image, and likeness, at a national level is creating the question of, are the college athletes employees? And what's fueling this is obviously the amount of money that goes through it, but also what will the NCAA do in reaction, and how do they pass laws to deal with it? Because the other thing we learn is that you may have a general approach on whether someone's employee or independent contractor, but there's also laws that will define it for you. So your Congress or the states can come in, Gilbert, and say, by statute, we're going to take a group of people and we're going to deem them to either be employees or not employees. So you have to know that. So at the end of the day, like every topic that we seem to hit, there's much more in the details than just flying along and saying, I guess all student athletes are employees. That's not true. Even within teams, or the way they're structured, might not be true. And so there's more to unpack than just kind of flying along and say, oh, their student athletes are now employees. You can't do that, because as we've instructed in prior, you're not instructed, but as we've talked about, student athletes and anybody that is an employee for purposes of one set of laws might not be for other set of laws. So believe it or not, you can have a situation where you're a worker and for some purposes you are an employee, but other purposes you are not. So it's not an all or nothing thing either. So we have to know what laws. So here's the approach. If you are questioning your status as employee, independent contractor, and your focus is on just taxes, let's say, you're going to pull out the SS8 form, the IRS form SS8, and it is the IRS's approach. You can fill it out and get the IRS to rule on your status if you so desire. Okay, that's number one. The approach the IRS will take are the three categories, and you'll see that in the SS8 form. We've talked about that in prior episodes. And the SS8 breaks down behavioral control, financial control, and the party's view of the relationship. So you got all three of those categories, and then they ask you to submit documents and so forth to make that determination. Now, going beyond that, you have the Section 530, which for tax purposes, like I said, is a provision that says that if you act in good faith and meet a number of other criteria, you will be deemed to have a safe harbor treatment that will honor your treatment of the workers, let's say, as not being employees, because you've done that in good faith and meet all the criteria of Section 530. IRS cannot come in and reclassify the workers if that provision applies. All right, now, beyond that, when we get beyond tax and you're worrying about some other context, if you're worrying about federal labor laws, you're worrying about the NLRB, if you're worried about any other law, you've got to identify, okay, is this a workers' comp issue? What's the context? Always ask, what's the context? Why are we worried about it? What law will apply? And if you're in that context, you go forward. In the case of the college athletes, what's going on here is their ability to protect themselves. And so they're looking for collective bargaining rights, which is the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board. And the classification of employees there, you can't unionize unless you're an employee. So you see how that's going? So they're looking to get collective bargaining rights as employees under the law NLRB as to how the NLRB defines the student athlete. Okay, so that's kind of the long and short of it is. But again, the NCAA is fighting back. They don't want to see that happen. So they're going to try and hit the issue head on. And when you're drafting or dealing with this, you also have the issue that, and we'll deal with this another time, what happens when you have employee situations, but you have so much going on with NIL and your proprietary rights. You set up a company. You set up a company for your own self to organize and operate, to brand yourself, market yourself, monetize yourself, whatever it is. If you start to think down that road, you could become your own company, or so the theory goes. So we see this quite a bit, athletes and memorabilia. We talk about this in the estate context. If somebody passes away and they have a branding and so forth associated with their likeness, how long can your memorabilia be accentuated after you passed away? If I'm not mistaken, you've got, the estate of Elvis Presley, right? You got Graceland and everything, right? So it can go a long time if you look at it that way. And then fights can occur in the estate matters, right? Where they're fighting over the royalties and the different things that come in. So again, a lot to unpack. We'll do it again on another episode. But for right now, stay tuned, because the college athlete situation, are not employees, the unionization of them, how this is going to unfold over the coming year, very hot topic, big issue. And so we'll stay on top of it here on this podcast and get back to it. And, and it'll be an important one.
Yeah, and we covered about athletes in the past 3 or 4 episodes, even before UCF and after UCF.
Yeah, so this is really hot right now. And as we look at these topics that we're hitting, we're trying to hit those that are coming out now, and then we'll hit other topics, of course. But this accentuates the idea that the laws they're kind of evolving, and you need to stay on top of them. So
you heard him, folks. You have to stay on top of them, and we'll keep you updated with this. You can call Mr. T. Scott Tufts at 407-647-7887, or you call the 800 number 877-647-7887, and you can email him at stufts@pcc.law. That's stufts@pcc.law, or you can visit the website at privatecorporatecounsel.com. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.